Daylilies, perhaps the most easiest flower to grow in the garden. Drought tolerant, can handle full sun, very little disease and insect pressure, and all these things combined together can make even the worst gardeners have success with growing flowers. In this video, I'm going to tell you all about daylilies. We'll talk about different types of daylilies, where to plant daylilies, how to water, how to fertilize, and so much more. Hi, I'm Dr. Tom Warren, and you're watching The Plant Doctor. Let's get started. So behind me here is a collection of daylilies that I've grown from seed. And daylilies prefer full sun, and that's what these get. So the sun rises here behind the camera, rotates over my right shoulder, and you can see behind me here is starting to set here in the evening. And this is the perfect sun spot for any daylily. The more sun they can get, the better. You want to avoid areas with 6 or less hours of direct sunlight a day. They're going to get leggy, they're not going to have as lush foliage as you see here, and it's just going to run into some problems with growing daylilies. So make sure you give them full sun. Once established, daylilies are extremely drought tolerant. When you first plant a daylily, you're probably going to need to water it 2 times a week during that first growing season. Once it goes dormant, don't water it at all. So daylilies are perennials. When the frost moves in, your first frost in your area, it's going to die back all the way to the ground. Don't panic, they'll come back up next spring. When they come back up the next spring, unless you're in a drought situation, you're not going to have to water your daylilies. I never water these behind me. I get enough rain here in the southeastern United States that I don't have to water these. I average about 50 inches of rain a year where I live. In the summertime, I'm getting maybe a half to 1 inch of rain per week. That is more than enough for these daylilies. In order for us to understand daylilies, we need to talk about their anatomy a little bit. So daylilies are going to grow in clumps that we refer to as fans. And so this is where the vegetation comes out of the ground in collective leaves, if you will. You'll have a group of 6 or 8 leaves go off in one direction, a group of 6 or 8 leaves go off in a different direction, and those are what we refer to as fans. The flower stalks have a different name. We refer to them as scapes, and you'll often see, if you buy daylilies online, you'll see advertisements or descriptions saying that this particular cultivar daylily, it has 8 flowers per scape, or 10 flowers per scape, or 12 flowers per scape. And that's just counting the number of individual flowers that will grow per stalk. So the name daylily tells us something. This flower here is only good for a day, hence the name daylily. However, this individual stalk here, it has maybe roughly 10 or 12 individual places where flowers can grow. So this scape here will produce a flower for roughly 2 weeks or so. So an interesting thing about these daylilies here behind me, daylilies, there's a couple of ways that we can reproduce them. And the easiest way is just to separate fans. So as the spring growth is coming on, so in April you'll see little pieces of daylily, maybe 3 or 4 inches tall, come up. You'll see the individual fans that we talked about earlier. You can divide those fans out and then plant those around in the garden. For example, if I wanted more of these orange daylilies, the easiest thing to do is just divide them out, and it's as easy as that. However, if you want to create a new daylily, something that's never been seen by man, for example, all of these back here, they exist in one place, my garden and nowhere else. Daylilies are not true to seed, so we can crossbreed daylily varieties or cultivars and create a brand new daylily that's just for you. And you can give this to friends or keep it in your garden or whatever. And I'm going to show you how to go about doing that. So it's a multi-step process. I'm going to do my best to zoom in on the flowers, and we'll talk about some flower anatomy, and I'll talk about seed collection and all this other stuff that we need to do in order to grow a daylily from seed. All right, so I turned the camera around. I'm going to try to give you a point of view perspective here of what we're looking at. We've got to talk about some flower anatomy first. this long part here. This is female. This is what goes down to the egg and makes seed. So we refer to this as the pistil, also sometimes referred to as stigma. All of these up here, these parts right here, I hope you can see that. That's the male part. So this is stamen, and that's what produces the pollen. There's pollen on here right now. I don't know if you can see that on my finger or not, but there's pollen here. So what we do is we pull off one of these stamens like this. So I've got this stamen here, and I'm going to show you on the same flower what we would do, but you could take this stamen and rub it on any other variety that you have in your garden, and this would work. So we're going to take this, we're going to rub it just like that. I hope you can see the pollen stuck. I'm trying to hold it still for you. The pollen stuck on there. So we have pollinated this flower. So one thing I want to be very clear about, just because we have pollinated does not mean that we're going to have fertilization. So pollination is just a transfer of pollen from the stamen to the pistil. Fertilization is when the pollen grain goes down this tube and meets the egg. So when sperm and egg unite, that's fertilization. And so if I wanted to document what I'm crossing with what, so for example, let's say I'm crossing two popular daylilies, Stella de Oro and Happy Returns, I could write that on like a little note card in Sharpie or pen or something that's going to last. Happy Returns / Stella de Oro. Find the flower that we cross-pollinated, take a bread tie and poke a hole through that card, run the bread tie through it, twist it onto that flower, and then when the flower falls off, we know exactly what is going to be produced from that seed pod. So these are two seed pods here off of a basic Stella de Oro. There's nothing fancy about these particular daylilies, but they already form pods, and you need to know what this looks like. This is the fruit of the daylily, and inside of it are the seeds, but you're not going to pull them off. You're going to leave them on all summer until they dry out. They're going to turn brown, and they're going to start to open up. And from there, you'll see black seeds inside. Once you get to that point, you'll want to harvest those seeds. Once you've harvested your seeds, there's a few things that you can do with them. You can actually store them in the refrigerator, and this may actually help increase germination because you're simulating winter in the refrigerator. We call this a chilling off period or cold hour requirements. Some plants require a certain amount of chilling hours in order to germinate the next spring. And daylilies are kind of all over the map in terms of chilling requirements. Some of them don't need any. Some of them may need a few hundred hours of chilling requirements before they germinate. But just a good rule of thumb, I like to put mine in the refrigerator for about 30 days. And then after that, you can simply pot them up into an old 6-pack cell or a 1-gallon pot. Keep them watered. You can start these in the winter. You can keep them in a south-facing window, and they will grow. They need some warmth. They need some sunlight. Don't put them in a north-facing window. They're not going to get enough light. But starting in January, you can start to grow these in February, March, and then once you get past your last frost date, which for me is around April 15th, you can go ahead and start to put these outside, and as long as you water them, you're going to have a daylily that's brand new that nobody else in the world has, because daylilies are not true to seed. Since we're on the topic of daylily seeds, we need to mention daylily genetics just a little bit. There's two main groups of daylilies. There's diploid daylilies, di meaning two sets of chromosomes, just like me and you. And there's also tetraploid daylilies, meaning 4 sets of chromosomes. And that's what these are here behind me. These are tetraploid daylilies. Now, we said that daylilies are not true to seed, and there's kind of an infinite range of what we can create with daylilies. And if you remember back to your high school biology class, you probably did a Punnett square where you get the box with 4 outcomes in it, and you get some genes from mom and you get some genes from dad, and you cross them and you look at the dominant traits and the recessive traits. Well, that's for diploid organisms. So there were 4 possible outcomes where you could have, homozygous dominant, homozygous recessive, or heterozygous. So meaning you carry the recessive gene, but the dominant one shows for whatever trait that you're looking at. Think about that with a tetraploid Punnett square. I'll do my best to go online to try to figure out how to best illustrate that for you guys. But the probability, the outcomes are really just kind of all over the map in terms of what you can create. Tall, short, all different color varieties that we've already seen in this video. The possibilities really are kind of endless with your tetraploid daylilies. So another thing we should mention is you can't take a diploid daylily and cross it with a tetraploid daylily. And if you have daylilies in your yard and you don't know what is what, and you start trying to cross-pollinate and you're not getting any seed heads at all, chances are you've got a diploid and you're trying to cross with the tetraploid, and genetically that's not going to work. The good news about daylilies is you don't have to fertilize them a whole lot. What I do with my daylilies in my garden is I give them an organic fertilizer, and I do this in the early spring. So the organic fertilizers, they work with bacteria in the soil, and the bacteria turns the organic fertilizer into nutrients for the plants. So just like with our daylilies, the bacteria in the soil, they kind of go to sleep in the winter. So as we're coming out of dormancy, as those temperatures rise, so for me, this is going to be in March, I'll come out and I'll dust these liberally with some organic fertilizers. If you're fertilizing later in the year, a good alternative to the organic fertilizer would be to use Osmocote. Osmocote is a slow release fertilizer. It's going to feed for 90 to 180 days, depending on which variety you get, and that will feed your daylilies as well. It has all the nutrients you need, the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, but also the macronutrients, so things like zinc and copper, those things we don't think about that plants need. It has it in there as well at the correct amounts. It's very good for daylilies. I'll make sure to leave a link down in the description for both of those products. I hope you find this video useful in your endeavors with growing daylilies and propagating daylilies. If there's something that you do in your yard for your daylilies that we did not go over in this video, please leave those thoughts down in the comments below. Here on the channel, I like to think of it as a community of learners, and I would love to learn something from you, the watcher. Guys, as always, thanks for watching The Plant Doctor, and until next time, happy gardening.